Hi, I'm going to read a bit from the middle of the book. It doesn't really need any explanation, but let's see how we go. Ned waits at the entrance to the shopping centre, Tribe Central. Hundreds of kids gather in little groups dressed to fit in. Some sit on the low wall outside the bookshop drinking big gulp Coke out of plastic cups. Others just sprawl on the floor, surrounded by carrier bags from the clothes shops inside. There's an abundance of black and piercings and feet that seem too big for bodies. Ordinary shoppers have to step over them to go in. There's a hum of voices, and muffled music played straight into ears through iPod headphones. A group of Japanese girls chatter excitedly next to H&M, hair in high pigtails dyed pink and purple. They're wearing tutus over thick stripy tights and stack heels with silver buckles. Ned leans his head to one side to look at their legs from a different angle. A hand grabs his shoulder and he jumps. It's Barney. Not bad, he says. Be better without the tights. The girls sense they're being talked about and turn to see Ned and Barney, heads cocked, looking at them. They giggle and wiggle their tutus. You ready? Asks Barney, with raised eyebrows. Ned nods, and they amble along the pavement towards the back street down to the beach. Bye, the girls shout after them as they walk past a newspaper vendor selling stories about a lost child. Once on the beach, Ned and Barney discard their flip-flops and t-shirts. They wrap them in their towels and weigh them down with stones. It's an extremely low tide, and there's a layer of sand a metre wide between the pebbles and the sea. It feels soft and muddy underfoot, oozing through their toes as they pad over it. Parts of the pier stick up out of the sand as if they've crash-landed from the heavens. The pier reminds Ned of a skeletal flying saucer, stuck for millennia in the sediment, newly dredged up in the modern age. Its two domed roofs were not made to cover ballrooms and amusement arcades, but to spin through space, piloted by creatures from another world. Ned read a lot of science fiction novels when he was a kid. In his unmanageable crossover from child to teenager, friendless in his bedroom, he escaped on warp drives to Arcadian galaxies to meet robot women and blue two-headed space captains. He's still got a stack of them under his bed, with yellowing pages and tattered covers. The sea is warm. It's had 10 days of unbroken August sunshine to heat up. Barney and Ned run into it to overcome the initial chill, and when it's deep enough, they plunge in, feeling the sting of salt on their faces and the marine stickiness in their hair. They swim quickly out to sea. The water is unusually clear today, and when they're just past the tide line, they can see the bottom as easily as if it were the Mediterranean. Ned gulps in a lungful of air and dives down into the muffled silence of the world below. Barney joins him a second later. There's not actually that much down there. The sand is surprisingly pale, covered with a few brown shells and groups of blue and white pebbles. Clumps of feathery seaweed blow in the current. A crab scuttles curiously past, eyes literally on stalks. There's a shoe, half buried. Ned picks it up, an old-fashioned brogue, the sort his dad wears to work. He looks at its frayed laces and then drops it back down to its resting place. The remains of the pier are much more interesting, covered in slimy green foliage. Thousands of mussels cling to them in strings, swinging blackly like exotic seeds. Barney grabs a clump and pulls. It's stuck fast, entwined in the metal and the rust. He gives it a decisive tug and it comes away sharply, flipping him backwards and slipping from his grasp to float softly to the sand below. A minute later, they kick back up to the surface, taking in salty air into their lungs. They swim in and out of the rusting girders of the pier like seals, lying on their backs to gaze up at the underside of its bare frame. Hundreds of seabirds perch on the ironwork above them. Huge white herring gulls stretch their wings and huddle together in the breeze. Primitive-looking cormorants, glossily black like they've been coated in oil, stretch their necks and pick at their feathers with long beaks. Then there are the pigeons. Ned hadn't expected pigeons. Pigeons are city birds, scavenging in bins and pecking at leftovers from picnics and cafe tables. Today there are as many pigeons on the pier as there are seabirds. Their noisy cooing fills the air, mixing with the caws of the gulls and the barks of the cormorants and the constant hypnotic swish of the sea. A duo of jet skis zooms in a race between the two portions of the pier, the drivers shouting encouragement and insult to each other in equal measure. The wave they create rushes at Ned and Barney, pushing them swiftly upwards and sideways. Ned's head thumps against the nearest metal strut. "Ow," he says, rubbing it with one hand, losing its balance and going under unexpectedly. He flaps his arms and treads water to right himself again. "Mind the giant metal girders," laughs Barney as he pops back up. "Shall we go up?" Ned nods and then frowns, his courage suddenly leaving him. "Do you think we should? I mean, it might be too dangerous. There's a lot of sharp metal out here." "You can't back out on me now. It's not much higher than the donut and it's really calm. We'll clear the struts, no problem. Jonesy did it last week and said it was awesome. Come on, it'll be wild. Think what everyone will say tonight at the shack." Then, sensing that Ned still isn't convinced, Barney adds, "Eleanor will be impressed." Ned nods again enthusiastically, a smile breaking his frown. "Okay then, let's go." They swim to the sea-bound edge of the pier, take a leg each and begin to climb up. They haven't worn their rubber-soled surf shoes, not realising the difficulty they would have gripping onto the surface. The metal is slippery with green slime and bladderwrack. Barnacles as sharp as glass stick to its rusted coating, scraping their hands and feet as they scale it. After 20 feet or so, the sea creatures give way to bare metal for a relatively easy climb to the top. The breeze has picked up into a sharp wind. It chills Ned's torso. Goosebumps cover his arms and his shorts stick to his legs. Icy drops trickle down his neck from his hair, which has lost all its yellow brightness. He looks over at Barney and they both grin. Adrenaline pumps through their bodies and their hearts thump in their throats. Barney gets to the top first. He crouches on the charred platform and gives Ned a hand up. They stand next to each other for a minute, looking out to sea in silence. Barney sits down with his legs over the ledge and curls his arms around a fire-damaged pillar. "Next stop, France," he says. He seems troubled. The grin is gone and he stares straight ahead as if he's looking for something on the horizon. Ned perches next to him on the black ledge of what was once the promenade. It's a long way down, into the waves. "You okay?" he says. "We don't have to, if you don't want to." Barney shrugs. "Last time I was here was the day it burned down." Ned looks over at him, but he's still staring at the waves. "You're losing it," he says. "We were here yesterday. We paddled round the pier and then lit a bonnie on the beach. That lifeguard came and told us off." Barney turns and looks at Ned. "No, I mean here, right here, on this bit." "What? You climbed the pier the day it burned down? I thought it went on through the night. Wasn't it still hot?" Ned is confused. He looks at Barney for some clue as to what he's on about, and then the look on Barney's face gives it away. "Shit, you're saying you did it, aren't you? That's what you mean, isn't it? You did it." Barney nods sadly. "Well, not just me, but I helped." And he tells Ned the whole story.